I think that got it going. Live stream is running. All right, welcome, Internet. Sorry, we're a couple minutes late here. We are live. Okay, you guys ready to get started? We've got a nice
Yes, please.
audience who's been waiting patiently here in the waiting room. So far, we've got Alan, Craig, Jeremy, Jim, John, Jose, Twice, Joyce, Omar, Richard, Terry, Tom, and others coming in. So welcome, everybody. We're going to get going here in 3, 2. Let me get us featured first. Hang on one second. Spotlight. And Derek, you got the show number?
I think we are looking at episode 73.
I think you're right. Here we go in 3, 2, 1. Hey, Derek, it's Wednesday, the 13th of December, 12/13/23. How are you today?
I'm good. It's our, I think it's our last podcast of 2023, and the year is being wrapped up.
It sure is. We've got an awesome guest today. I'm going to go ahead and get Dave Conley up here on the screen. Hey, Dave.
How you doing, Eric? Derek, how you guys doing today?
Fantastic. How you been? Happy holidays.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. As you guys have noticed, we've had a little bit of technical difficulties. We've got clones of Dave Conley entering the panel here for periodically, and I'm sorry in advance if that happens to you because I'm going to kick you out. So sorry in advance. I'm not being cruel. I'm just trying to keep this show on the road. But Dave, I remember back in 2009 walking into a conference room at a hotel in Rome, Italy, and being completely enthralled with the speaker there, talking about something that I later learned was short for the Teoria Решения Izobratatelskich Zadaч, better known as TRIZ, T-R-I-Z, and that speaker was you. The following year, I remember staying up all night at the SCIP conference in Washington, D.C. Until all the wine was gone, I believe, and that's when we called it a night. I think the sun was coming up. But we obviously became really good friends 15 years ago, or almost, and have been doing all sorts of stuff together ever since. So thanks for being on Running into the Fog with the Johnson Brothers. Derek, what show is this?
I think we're looking at it. I think we're at episode 73. It may be 72. Give me a little grace if I get that wrong.
I think it's 73, and I think you mentioned last one of the year. And I think you're a great way for us to finish off the year, Dave. So thanks again for being on here today.
Awesome. Well, honored to be here, and always love working with you all.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dave, as we kind of prepped, you are the next in our little mini series on artificial intelligence that we've been doing. And one of the rationales for inviting you on to talk about that was that about 3.5 years ago, going on 4, you did a forecasting study around the trends of engineering system evolution for the AI and machine learning space and its effects on the job and labor and workforce ecosystem of the greater Milwaukee area for the city of Milwaukee. I wanted to bring you on to sort of talk through a little bit of, what you got right, what is still to come, what the signals might be that'll take us on, and so that we can see what's coming next in the whole AI subdomain. So with that, before we jump into that discussion, I want to invite everybody who's on the Zoom webinar bridge right now that you can be a panelist too if you volunteer to join the panel in the second half of the show. We call this first half of the show, we're streaming on social, we call this Unthinkable. If you're seeing us on LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook or Twitter X, one of those venues, we encourage you to jump on over to Open Recon and register so you can join the bridge and stay for the second half of the hour, Unspeakable, when we're going to say all sorts of nasty things about the world. We might even cuss. We've been known to cuss in the second half. So family show for the first half, second half, anything goes. You all can join the panel, and basically we turn Dave over to you. With that, that's the last time I'm going to ask. So you got to volunteer now if you want to join the panel. Dave, tell us a little bit about yourself and sort of the whole AI ML subject matter, and we'll kick things off there.
Sure. Just real quickly, I've been a private consultant in the world of innovation methodologies to Fortune 500. I kind of learned my trade at Intel Corporation. In my last 7 years at Intel, I ran their worldwide innovation program. And I utilize a method called the theory of inventive problem solving, TRIZ. And one of those tool sets is called the Trends of Engineering System Evolution. And you can use the Trends of Engineering System Evolution to very effectively forecast any kind of, literally any kind of engineering system. I mean, anything from a ballpoint pen to a jet engine, to a microprocessor to a crescent wrench. And so we use this to apply to different kinds of engineering systems and forecast what is coming with them very shortly. Now, just real quickly, because we do want to get in and talk about AI and ML. But right now I'm sharing a screen, and you can see here, this is a diagram of the trends in engineering system evolution. There are 11 interrelated trends that all work together, and all engineering systems, and again, that can be a pair of glasses, that can also be a hand trowel for your garden. It can be literally a rocket engine. They all follow these different trend lines. And what we did was this AI ML study was funded by the Economic Development Administration of the United States and executed through the city of Milwaukee. And I put together an analysis using these trends. Now, as a quick example, we do want to talk about a little bit about where AI and ML is going. Already, as with usually when you do these trend analyses, these things start coming true immediately. It's not like the trend analysis makes them come true. The trend analysis is just so effective at understanding what is going to happen very quickly, what's going to transpire. So you kind of asked me what's come true so far. Well, the main thing and the most important thing with AI and ML, and am I still sharing my screen here?
You are. Yep. You're on slide 2.
Can you
Very
go
good.
full screen on that, Dave? We're kind of in that side-by-side notes. I think we could get that a little bit bigger if we could.
Yeah, I will.
Or go to slide share
Well,
mode.
the problem is every time I go to presentation mode, it causes problems on my
Got it.
triple screens.
Okay.
So here we have 3 basic constructs that we apply to artificial intelligence and machine learning. First, you have to have input to these systems. And this sounds silly. Of course, they have to have data to work on, but there's a huge variety of constructs and categories by which you need to understand how those are going to change to understand how AI and ML is going to change. For instance, what does the data source look like? Where is the data source coming from? Are humans feeding the data source, and are humans doing correction and tagging of the data sources, or are machines doing it? If it's a machine doing it, is it the actual AI ML machine itself, or is this a third party data broker that's going out and getting information for you? So in other words, the first thing and the most important is that garbage in is garbage out. If you don't have good data feeds that make sense, then you're going to have just a ridiculous output from your AI and ML. Now, let's act like all the data is good and it's all actually valid data, it's all correct. Then we have to do computation. The AI and ML has to do something with that information. Now, this is all, the way AI and ML works is not really through writing a massive code, but you do have to direct the AI ML system as to what you want it to do with the data that it's being given. And there's all kinds of information that you can analyze here as to how this is going to advance. For instance, is this a single data engine doing this work, or do you have multiple running in parallel? And if you have multiple running in parallel, are they collaborating with each other, or are they competing with each other? And all of these states will exist at some point in the future. And in other words, once you are on your computation stage, there's all kinds of way that this can happen also, not only in the actual hardware and where it exists, but what is it you are asking the system to do with the data? Finally, now that the computations have happened, we have some kind of output. And it can either be a paragraph that ChatGPT wrote for you when you asked it to do research on Shakespeare, or it can actually be controlling airways across North America to help with air traffic control systems, right? It can be war planning. It can be output on how you want your product line to look and how to understand what customer needs are in the next 2 or 3 years so you can start working on that now. Now, I've hit you with a whole bunch of information, but basically what happens when you do a trend of engineering system evolution analysis is you have to break the system down into some kind of model. And when I was asked to do AI and ML, I said, well, what are the basic constructs here? We have to have input to this system. We have to do some kind of computation, and then we have to do something with that output. The future of each of these steps is important here in understanding where AI and ML is headed, and they can actually be tracked separately, or they can influence each other and somewhat track together. And in more likely scenario, both of those scenarios will happen at different states of time.
Right on. So for those of you in the audience who are seeing this for the first time, basically what Dave does in problem solving is really problem definition. And so the analysis of those problems amount to the deconstruction of the overall problem into subproblems and subsystems. And that has to happen in order to accurately produce a solution. In fact, if it doesn't happen that way, you will very accurately produce a non-solution to the problem. You're going to end up with something that won't work reliably. Is that a fair statement, Dave?
Yeah, no, that's a very good statement. I appreciate you bringing that up. You know, everybody wants to know where AI and ML is going. Well, right now, the majority of the population, which partially includes myself, because I do understand some basics about it, but this is a deep and broad topic, right? And so it's also important to understand, you know, where should you invest money? Right now, what I would say is the best place to invest money is to making sure you have very good data sets. And exactly what that looks like, I don't know. Are you buying these data sets? Are you programming a system to go out and do sensing and data gathering on its own? And for instance, who's qualifying these data sets? Is this done by humans, or are there third-party AI support systems that are qualifying data before it goes in? So that's the immediate thing I would say is you need to focus on data, because if it's not good data, garbage in is garbage out on your system. Now, there's also a lot of other interesting things. I've had lots of people, you know, even Elon Musk says, oh yeah, when the computers all become sentient. I have to tell you, that's never going to happen. A computer is a huge, massive abacus. If you can give me an abacus that goes sentient, then I'll tell you I was wrong, and a computer can do it too. But there's nothing to do this. You can write code to tell the machine to act like it's sentient, but you cannot just have a machine turn into that by itself. They're just balancing 0 and 1s. It's an abacus. It's a huge, powerful, massive abacus that can cover hundreds of football fields at one time, but they are just sliding beads on a rod. In one position, they represent a 0. In another, they represent a 1. You're never going to see computers develop a consciousness. Now, that can also be problematic in AI, because if you program AI and tell me how to maximize the profits of my company, and you do not consider anything about secondary and tertiary effects of that, are you wiping out the environment? Are you leaving huge amounts of the world population behind in creating scarcities of natural resources that they need to live? And since a computer can't actually make those value or ethical judgments, taking that decision away from humans, even if they make the bad decision and start harming the environment and so forth, at least a human's doing it. A machine can't do that unless you bring in a second massive AI system that can judge world politics, economics, economic conditions of different countries, and actually decide what is best for the whole economy and not just your corporation. And that data set, I guarantee, makes the engineering data set of how to maximize my profits, the data set of, and is it the right thing to do? That's a nightmare data set that will be very difficult to put together and have it work effectively, because who decides what's important? You have competitors in the marketplace. They're going to want the data sets to look different. Different countries are going to want it to look different. This is a very complex system. So a general intelligence AI system is a far-flung, well, I think it would be very difficult to have one that actually makes sense. You could put one together for one organization or country, and it would probably make decisions that would harm other countries and other organizations.
Yeah.
So this is a tricky thing to pull off.
Yeah. So I agree with you. I know you don't care if I agree with you because you know you're right. And I say that it sounds kind of jerky when I say it that way, but we're the same way that way. When you're right, that doesn't matter if anybody agrees with you or not, but it's a nice gesture to have agreement and consensus between friends. And so I agree with you, but I agree with you because I understand what happened with generative AI in the last year or a little more and Chat GPT. Because I actually studied how large language models work. How do large language models produce the output that's generated? And when I understood the mechanical process behind the generation of an answer in response to a prompt, the magic went away. It was no longer a magical. And Dave, can I ask you to take your screen share down so we can see your beautiful face a little more closely? I just realized the magic went away for me when I understood what the machine was doing. The machine was merely analyzing very, very large statistical numbers of language snippets and then producing a response word by word and then correcting itself based upon the expectations of the user. And no two answers were ever really the same. The same prompt will produce often very different responses based upon the types of variables that are going into the answer from the statistical analysis that the machine is producing. And so I think it's really a very elaborate parlor trick that looks intelligent and caused, I think, a tremendous amount of anxiety, probably is the right word, as we become a knowledge worker society increasingly. There is increasing anxiety over anything that looks like a knowledge worker competing with humans.
Well, keep in mind, there's a reason they tacked artificial onto the front of intelligence when they put this together. It is not intelligent. It is simply following logic programming steps that's been fed to it to look like it's making decisions and so forth. There have been lots of interesting studies. For instance, when they first started having things like Chat GPT come out, somebody asked, please put together a moon mission to Mars, including the hardware and so forth. And then they gave the output to a NASA scientist and said they did this AI system did a pretty good job on some of this, but some of the physics it used to design the rocket ship doesn't even exist, and there's no way that rocket would ever even leave the planet. Right? So you can't just trust the output of AI at this point in time. And this all takes us back to this whole computation engine and the output. How do you check that you don't have complete garbage coming out of your AI system that's going to lead you down the bad path? Right? Humans can deliberate and talk about it and have oversight of each other. So one idea we talked about is the future where you have competing AI systems. You ask all 5 of them, let's say, the same question, and you kind of let them duke it out and argue about who's right and check each other's statistics. and challenge each other's assumptions so that somehow you actually get a decent output that will not harm your organization or the economic situation that it exists in.
Right on. Yeah, we got a couple questions and comments in the chat that I'll read out loud here. But for those of you commenting and chatting, consider joining the panel in the second half. Just raise your hand or mention it if you'd like to join in. Yeah, so I think that notion that an AI would be the challenger or the skeptic, so to speak. I think that's, by the way, the mechanism that you're describing is that humans have our civilizations evolved through debate and through skepticism and through critique. And the ability of a system like generative AI to produce more reliable output, which is actually realistic, is probably based on having a counter AI that is there specifically to challenge. And anything that seems a little fishy gets a question that elicits the flawed logic behind that response. So I'll let you respond to that, and then let's go to a couple of the comments from our audience.
Sure. No, that would be great. Yes, I'm not saying that we're immediately going to see basically referee AI systems out there checking on their buddies working, but that is one very possible trend of where this needs to go to keep it in check, right? If you're going to try to design the AI system to keep itself in check, you're going to have secondary and tertiary operational systems making that happen. In the beginning, humans need to oversee all this, right? They need to, for instance, God forbid we have AI systems deciding how wars go and they decide to bomb some country. I would highly suggest we have some kind of human that has a lot of military and political experience saying this makes sense or this doesn't, and so in the beginning, you're going to have humans doing this output checking. Just like in the beginnings, you have to have humans doing the data input checking, and then you have to have humans doing the data output from the computation. Have that checked also. In the future, they could start being third-party computational systems doing this, and at some point in time, all that may come actually into the AI system. But there's going to be a lot of checks and balances that needs to happen for AI to come out effectively and in a non-harmful way.
I think just jumping in there real quick, and we talked a little bit about this, guys, yesterday, in kind of that prep session for today's podcast. I think Kurt in the chat called it out. The hallucinations that occur are generally because the more generalized AI that you might be pointing at, if you were pointing at the general chat GPT, and I'll preface that I don't really know the first thing about any of this. I masquerade as knowing anything at all. But yesterday I had an interesting opportunity to be exposed to one such hallucination that we talked about, and the difference between when you ask a generalized system, what is an IRA? Most of the time it's going to come back and tell you that it's an individual retirement account, and it's not going to expose the next level of thinking. Do you mean the individual retirement account? Do you mean the Inflation Reduction Act? Do you mean the Irish Republican Army? What version of IRA do you actually mean? Whereas if you can point it to a small private language model that is completely situated around your domain or sphere of expertise or interest, then you have that opportunity to avoid some of those hallucinations that occur. And that was just a kind of an eye-opening experience for me yesterday at a client site.
And humans can train it at that point. So that's where the overlap between AI, a generative AI using a large language model, but a private one that's fed by proprietary data, and machine learning, a human that's teaching the machine that certain results are positive and other results are negative, come in. So to your point there, Derek.
Yeah, so there's data checking up front and there's output checking downstream. How's all that going to happen? Both very crucial to the success of AI. Now, just real quick, because I know everybody's like, what's this trend stuff? There's there's 11 different trends, and when you add in all the sub-trends, there's like 26 different trends. A real quick example, for instance, is one trend called the trend of increasing controllability, where the sub-trend is increasing level of control. And I'm looking at data input for an AI system. And at the start, most data sets are static and provided to the system by humans. Now, the forecast, which are triggered by going from fixed program to fixed program with intervention to externally controlled system to self-controlled systems, that is a basic trend of how all engineering systems change. Related to data, that could mean next is you're going to have data, you're going to have the system or data itself update and configure the data in some limited way, in a human designed way, without real-time human intervention. Then the data will be updated and configured as needed or desired by way of external super systems, like maybe third-party computing systems. And finally, data will be updated and configured as needed or desired by way of the system doing the computation itself. So I'm just showing you this to say this is one of about 24 different trend steps where you can put in the current state and then make predictions about how that's going to change. And this is very crucial that you understand we are not making the future, we're forecasting it. This whole system is based on analysis of the worldwide patent database and how things have changed forever. Now, the master usage of these trends is to do a trend analysis, which gives you highly accurate forecast and as to how your technical or business systems will change. But I can't tell you when or who's going to make these changes, just that they will happen. Aurora WDC can then take the output of those analyses and they can give you information as to when that's going to happen, what org is likely to do it, and who's most likely to lead those changes, and roughly when we're going to see them show up.
Right on. Well, and so I'm going to thank you for that plug, by the way, Dave. I'm going to jump to our chat for a second, and then we're going to say goodbye to you guys on social. So all of you, those of you watching this on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, X, or Facebook, head over to Open Recon, register, and jump on to join the live stream here for the second half of the show. We've had a few hands up. Let me know if that means you want to join the panel. Jim Miller, I'm looking at you with your hand up there. Alan Michael said, data plus AI plus knowledge graphs, question mark. Thoughts on the need for semantics and knowledge graphs to work together for more control and more meaning? Any thoughts on that, Dave?
Well, actually, he works more in the computing industry than I do, and probably the data analysis industry. So he's using some nomenclature I'm not quite sure how he's using. Can you reword that for a more amateur in this area?
So, Alan, maybe you can let us know exactly what you mean by a knowledge graph, and then we can kind of come back to your question there, or at least address it. Mike Diaz was after that. Agree, data is critical. You need to train AI with the right data and insights to provide a differentiated solution. Otherwise, you're part of the noise rather than the signal that people are looking for. And it's harder to judge output when LLM is a black box to you. Yeah, great point.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Mike.
That's actually why I looked into how they actually work. Because it was such a magic trick to me that I didn't understand it, and I had to sort of ask myself, well, what's it actually doing? To see, what that really looks like. Kurt said, totally agree with good output data is absolutely critical, which is why generative AI periodically hallucinates. Derek, you called this one out earlier. No different than needing good input into intelligence. Kurt had to go. Tom Tao, we're still assuming that we are superior to artificial intelligence. With the speed of learning and evolution, AI may surpass us soon enough. The field of chess and Go are current examples. Any thoughts on that, Dave?
Well, so like any computer, there are certain activities that it blows humans out of the way, like mathematical calculations, statistical analysis, crunching through huge amounts of data. But again, what data are you giving it to make these advanced decisions over humans? And if that data, for instance, you remember the old thing about alternative facts. what if your AI is sent out to make good political decisions for the country and it runs across a bunch of alternative facts somewhere? And what we know those are is that that's not really what happened. That's not how it went down. And yet now it believes that was the past and that's what happened. So yes, there are certain aspects of AI that can outpace humans, at least in its ability to think through different scenarios. But if it's past experience, which would be for a human, for an AI, its data is wrong, then yeah, it's running circles around us and producing nonsense. And
Right.
we have to be really careful about that. That can get
Well,
out of hand fast.
and to that point, humans produce nonsense all the time when we
Yes,
believe
they
things.
do. Except we produce it in a human world, and then we have pundits and arguments, and it's on the news, and it's on left news, it's on right news, and it tends to come out in the wash. But if you just have an AI system, and that's why I was talking about, maybe you need 1,000 AI systems that check
Yeah.
each other. But if you have an AI system that says this is the truth, you got to challenge it. What was the data that it used to come to the truth?
So that is actually a predictable next stage of evolution
Yes.
for artificial intelligence. It is predictable that there must be a contrarian generative AI that is designed to control the bullshit generation. Oh, I cursed in the first half. Sorry, guys. The BS generation from the generative AI output.
Right.
Right? Isn't that inevitable?
Yeah. Well, so you and I chatted about that a little bit yesterday, and I know that Dr. Raghu Bhardwaj, who was your guest last week,
who's in the audience, by the way.
Awesome. Also, I've chatted with him about this, and he also brought up similar concepts. For instance, we have said that with global warming, it's possible to alter the chemical makeup of the atmosphere to reverse global warming. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
So we'll just have AI tell us how we need to modify the atmosphere. Now, as we've discussed, and I've heard Raghu talk about also, what are the secondary, tertiary effects of that? And do we need AI to be able to look at that to say, if we pump this chemical into the atmosphere to reverse global warming, and all of a sudden things, what could possibly go wrong with that? So that may be a good use of AI also to check our human decisions and say, these are some possible outcomes that maybe the computations are so difficult, you can't really check all these possibilities and let AI do that to say, have you thought about this, this, and this? That could be a very good use of AI. It's not making decisions, it's giving the feedback on other decisions.
And Alan, thank you for the link in chat. I'm throwing it up here on the screen. In a nutshell, Dave, knowledge graphs serve as a structured repository of facts and relationships, providing contextual, interconnected data LLMs need to give accurate answers to prompts. Essentially, they help LLMs understand what they're actually saying.
Sure. Awesome. Thank you.
Thus, Alan's question around knowledge graphs basically serving as that bullshit detector, for lack of a better word. That's what my dad would call, our dad would call it, is that the knowledge graph is detecting anomalies to the factual output before that factual output is presented to the user, I would assume.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And that's almost like, giving professional input for research papers and stuff. These are peer reviewed. So maybe you have to have a peer reviewed AI truth map that any output from AI is first checked against before you really even consider this as, we should now consider this output and decide if we're going to use it or not. But I think that's an excellent insight. Thanks, Alan.
One of the comments, Jose, replying to Tom's about assuming we're not superior to AI, Jose says, I think we are not faster or superior, but we can adopt different points of view, which a computer or algorithm can't yet.
Right. Now, once again, I want to be, Eric, you and I talked about this yesterday also. If the machine can't have a consciousness, it can't have guilt, it can't feel pride, it can't, it can't worry about children in another country that are starving. It cannot ever be superior to the ability to be and hopefully do what's best for the organization in general, not yourself. And you could write AI programming to hopefully take in worldviews and have empathy as best you can, but it's still just faking it and it still doesn't know what it's doing. So there are parts of AI that can be superior to us, but I think you would have a lot of philosophers. I almost sound like a waffle or something. You could have philosophers who may say things like, there's no way you can actually trust AI to ever make super complex, hard decisions because they don't have a soul. They can't really test themselves. We have CEOs and stuff that test themselves and decide to go to the dark side, but at least they made the consideration and they know what they're doing. AI is just going to, you tell it to maximize profits, it's going to maximize profits even if it wipes out the agricultural regions in the Southeast to do it, right? How do you write these programs to have no harm? How do you have them to actually be best for the whole and not best for the few? Capitalism doesn't really say anything about being the best for the whole. It says always increase profits. That's a tough prompt for an AI because that's all it's going to do.
Maybe that's why CEOs are the profession that express psychopathology most intensely. I remember that article a few years ago where, and no offense, Derek, you're as a CEO, I'm not calling you a psychopath, but CEOs have this tendency to not be more psychopathic or at a higher ratio, but to express psychopathological symptoms more intensely, is the way it's described.
Yeah, I've met both kinds.
Derek just unmuted. I think
I won't ask you to comment on what kind you think I am, Dave. But yeah, imagine both kinds exist out there.
Yeah.
All right. We had Mike Diaz say, spoke to a group of CROs and CMOs, so chief risk officers, I'm guessing, and chief marketing officers recently. In marketing and sales, there's still a focus keeping a human in the loop. Lots of caution still about customer-facing solutions and chat.
Yeah, should be.
Thanks, Mike, for that.
Yeah, good
Asimov's
choice.
Terry says Asimov's robot rules, right?
Yeah.
You can never harm humans.
That's a fun read, and that's actually an excellent read when you're thinking about how AI and ML needs to be designed in the first place.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if anyone has been watching, I think it's on Apple TV Plus, the Foundation series. I think they got greenlit for a third season, by the way. Great show if you haven't seen it, and I won't do any spoilers here, but let's just say there's a lot of AI involved there and a lot of what could be called moral ambiguity by the AIs. Even with all of Asimov's programming, Terry, you'd love it, by the way. Thanks, Terry. Thanks for being here. I see you got to go. But look up the Foundation series on Apple TV Plus. You'd really enjoy it. I think it's time that Chief Revenue Officers, thank you for clarifying that CRO comment there, Mike. If we have no takers for unspeakable, and I don't think we do, this whole AI topic is a little bit intimidating, is what I've noticed. And Derek, maybe you have some opinions on that, but I think the AI topic's a little intimidating for a lot of people in our usually very jocular audience. They're usually like super interested in hopping on and having an informal discussion about the most abstract subject matter in the universe.
Anybody game for some fun?
Sure.
I've never done what I'm about to do on this podcast, but there's got to be a first time for everything. So let's
liquor involved.
Actually, no liquor. It's only 12:40 in the afternoon.
It's afternoon.
Usually we might be doing this with you, Dave, but we'll save that for a different day. You've agreed, by the way, to be a beta reader of our book. I'm going to throw that out to anybody on the thread. We're still collecting names, people that know us well enough to provide honest and candid feedback about this book we're writing, The Missionary and the Mercenary, yet aren't going to be too abusive, in that process. So let's say a podcast co-host wanted to lose 25 pounds and you tried to write an AI to help you do that. So what if, number one, that were possible, and you said you could write this AI that was completely unbiased, had no sentient, emotional, connection whatsoever to the user of that space or that tool to help said thing get done. And I'm here. I'll just say it. I'm shining the light directly at myself because over the next 6 months, before I turn 50 on the 15th of May, 2024, I want to lose 25 pounds.
Nice.
I know that there's a couple of secrets. I've defeated some of these uncertainties that we talk about in this book, Eric, where, if I get my frame on that scale every single morning, the odds of losing 25 pounds go precipitously higher because it's a constant ping to my mindset about what I should or shouldn't be doing the night before, raiding the pantry, the refrigerator, whatever else.
Plus, you can enter it in your spreadsheet, and it's going to blow your graph if you have a bad result.
Exactly. So, those that know me well know that I track things like 3 and 7 day averages. When I'm really in the zone with that type of thing, that's just what I do. But do you think there's a possibility with that particular scenario that you could develop an AI that actually supports the process of getting oneself in shape? And this might be a New Year's resolution for all sorts of people. So, maybe others on this thread will benefit from what you have to say about this, Dave. And we didn't set any of this up before. That I'm throwing this at you completely cold. How would one go about writing a useful AI that, or maybe it's several AIs combined? So one that tracks, calories, one that tracks, what daily weigh-ins, one that tracks, your visits to the grocery store, one that tracks whatever else, right? Do you have any thoughts around how one would go about doing such a thing and doing it in a productive way rather than a way in which is going to be completely kind of defeating to one's, emotional state of mind, much less day-to-day process of getting there?
Yeah, absolutely. So you remember we had 3 constructs for AI systems. We had sensing and input, which is basically somehow data gets into the system. You have the actual AI coding that you're writing, so the AI will do some kind of computation, and then we have output. Now, I'll assume, well, it depends on how advanced we're going to be with other technologies. But for instance, first of all, you need to understand what is happening in your body. How much do you weigh? How many calories did you take in? How much exercise did you do? And are you just going to somehow guess and enter that daily? Or are you going to have sensing systems that actually track what your body is doing and using that as input? So once again, data in has everything to do with the quality of the output of the data. The quality of the input has everything to do with the quality of the output. If it's just asking you what's your estimated calorie intake to the day, how much did you exercise, but did you really know because you were working all day and you went up 45 flights of stairs in an office building and you ran for the subway, do you really know how much you exercised? Or do you need some kind of computational system, maybe like your Apple iPhone in your back pocket that is actually reading your calorie usage?
Yep.
Second of all, you then
Or
have to,
or a Fitbit paired with a
whatever.
sleep monitor
Right.
that tracks, because sleep is a huge component
Right.
part of doing something like that.
That's exactly
With
right.
you.
And so in other words, the reason I have sensing and input is that the system may have to sense the data. There's nowhere to go take it from a database. You're creating it daily as you move, eat, etc. So then you write this system to do something with this. Now, what's it based on? Did the old food pyramid that tells you to eat as much bread every day as you can slip into its decision-making process? It found a 1960s food pyramid and based its decisions on that.
Yeah.
Or is it going to be the latest research from doctors? And I've talked to doctors who disagree on the best and latest research on how to affect your diet. So you have to figure out, again, is the AI going to decide who knows best about weight control and use that information to control your system?
Right.
So that's tricky also. There's another place to either excel or fall down, is what is the input data that the AI used to make decisions about the data it gathered on you each day. Then you have the output. Is that a report? Is it saying, don't quit eating donuts, Derek? Or is it actually controlling some machine that produces your meals and tells you when to go eat them? Right? Is it feeding another engineering system that is actually executing your diet for you? Or is it just telling you, you're doing great, Derek? Quit eating those damn Hershey bars and try to walk a little more. Or is it actually forcing you to exercise and or cooking meals for you and making you eat them at 5:30, eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper? You know, is that how it's helping you control? So it really depends on how invasive the system is to your data and your control over your system, or is it just making suggestions to you based on your assumptions about your calorie intake and outtake for the day?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
actually
I knew we could have some fun with this one. That's really cool. What were you
It's an
saying?
incredible innovation idea, actually, is a food distribution machine that forces you to exercise before it feeds you.
Well,
Which
so
we
when
have
I
for
was a kid, I always thought about an exercise bike that you ran your TV off of, so you could only watch a football game if you were pumping your bicycle.
Perfect.
I never
So,
patented that one, but you know.
fantastic. So we have an interlocutor. Mike Diaz wants to join the panel. So Mike, I'm upgrading you now. I think in the process of doing that, as I promote you to panelist, I'm going to cut off our social streamers. Thanks for joining us. If you want to stay for the second half, jump over to the Open Recon website, sign up, and then rejoin